welcome to my podcast, Innervation. Innervation was inspired by my previous podcast, Silence, where over the course of 2 years, I spoke with a total of 100 women from science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. I kept all of those guests anonymous so that we could talk openly and honestly about their lives. We discussed their experiences, what they've learned along their life journeys, and their hopes and ideas for living fulfilling and contented lives. Because their identities were always kept safe, the conversations on Silence were always so raw and transparent, and we didn't just talk about being women in STEM, but about everything. The topics that tended to come up were also the same topics that I discussed with my mentees, or I'm asked about after I've given a talk in schools and colleges, or, if I'm honest, the topics I tend to talk about with my friends and family. Because these are the topics that all seem to concern us, and when we talk about these topics, we tend to talk about them in an environment where we've let our guard down and we're showing our vulnerability. What I've done is sift through all these episodes of Silence to bring you my favourite sound bites on these particular topics. Each week on Innervation, I'll be reflecting on the perspectives that came up on Silence that I feel are actually pearls of wisdom that we can all learn from, that I found particularly provoking, inspiring and empowering, in the hope that they resonate with you too. This week is all about giving up. It's interesting because I was initially going to call this episode Abandonment, and at some point I probably will do an episode on abandonment, because I think it's something that some of us have a tendency to do. We can abandon ourselves because we want to put other people first, or because we have to meet expectations of other people or society or culture. And, we can abandon what we truly want for ourselves in favour of what we should do. And when I was searching through all the podcasts for some perspectives on abandonment, I couldn't actually find any. So I was like, okay, well, if abandonment doesn't come up as a topic that we've discussed, then maybe there are topics similar to abandonment that might have come up instead. And so one of the things that I searched under was giving up. Because I think abandonment and giving up are kind of similar. We give up on ourselves. And so I want to just find out from the women from Silence what they consider when it comes to the topic of giving up. And it's interesting, what came to the forefront is that a lot of women are really fighting for things in their lives, and what they don't want to give up or what they end up giving up are some of the biggest deals in their lives, the things that are most important to them. And so we kick off with this quote from episode 7, where clearly time is one of the most important things to her.
There was one astronaut said that he gave a talk and he thought the entire auditorium was asleep, pretty much. And then a couple of years later, a woman came up to him and was like, because you came and talked at our school, I became a doctor. And to me, that's just very powerful, that you could just give up a little bit of your time and change somebody's life is a pretty powerful thing.
It's interesting that when we see time as being the biggest thing, we want to use it wisely. We consider it being given up when we're wasting our time. But we see it being a massive act of giving when we give something as precious as time to other people. And I think it's really important to sort of consider what it is that's really important to you, and then use it really wisely. Because when we are giving something up, essentially we're giving it away. And I think often when we do give something up, we want something in return for giving that precious thing up. And if we don't get that thing in return, it can feel like what we gave up was a waste of time, or a waste. So time is definitely something that's really important to us. And if we do give it to anyone or anything, we want to have a guarantee that we're not wasting it. In the case of my guest from episode 7, she is giving up time because she wants to. What she's getting in return of giving up time is fulfillment in being able to help other people. And that, she believes, is time well spent. There's also the sense of giving up, as in giving in. You know, I think sometimes we fight for things, and in the end we just give up because we just think, I'm not going to get what it is I really want. And I think a lot of girls in science do suffer from this, because often they're really good at the sciences, really good at STEM subjects, but you know, these subjects do take a lot of hard work. I don't think anything that's worth having doesn't require hard work and commitment. But I think what happens to girls in particular is that they work really hard for something and they're just not getting the result they want, and so they tend to give up. And that's a real shame, because I don't think giving up is really an option. I think someone famous said that. There's a quote like, never give up. And I think it is really important to keep pushing. If you really feel in your gut that something's right for you, or you should have something, you should never, ever, ever give up. And I think that can often be the fundamental difference between boys and girls, which is that boys tend to give up less than girls. That's certainly what I've seen of women when it comes to STEM. I think sometimes it's just so hard that we end up giving up, and we end up following a different path because maybe we have a stronger calling, maybe to go into a different career or go into motherhood. And sometimes when we're fighting so hard for something, it can take it out of us to the point where we just think maybe this isn't right for us. But I think change makers, they never ever give up. If they really believe and they really see their vision for something in the future, they just won't give up. And that's pretty much what my guest from episode 27 is alluding to.
So I always been like very curious and focused, and I haven't I haven't just given up very easily. But I do know that a lot of girls, when learning science and math at my old school, in middle school, when they were learning math and all the boys were getting it and it was too hard for them, they would just give up and just not process it. Which I do think that has to do with the guys just being like, oh yeah, I get it. Okay, let's move on. So
I think if you do want to change the world or make some kind of different impact, you should never give up. I think when we want to make a difference, it's often never been done before. We're trailblazing and it can be really hard to make things change. But it's the people that don't give up that make that change. They blaze that trail. They do something different. They create seismic shifts in the way we as humans do things. And I think it is really tough, but if you've got the strength of character to keep going and never give up and stick by your vision, then it will come good in the end. That's not to say that the challenges won't be there, but they will be there, absolutely. But it's the not giving up that creates change. I think the people that are really determined not to give up do succeed in the end. I think people that are... Sometimes people don't actually have a choice. It's not about giving up. It's just they don't know any other way than to pursue what's in their hearts. And that's certainly the sentiment from my guest from episode 60. She doesn't know any other way. I mean, she studied mechanical engineering. She comes from a sort of background of academics, and she just didn't know any other way than to keep pushing forward with her engineering studies despite all of the obstacles along the way.
In control of a situation, and it's like my brain won't give up control in those situations. It's saying like, no, I'm going to keep buzzing, like don't you dare try to switch me off. And it almost goes into like hyperdrive. So it's I have not yet found the meditation exercise that's going to crack it for me, but maybe I'll keep trying someday.
Well, I think, and sometimes we can hear that calling so loudly that we can't actually switch our brains off. And, in those sort of scenarios, it's not even, giving up isn't even an option. It's like you just feel something so strongly that you have to keep pursuing it. And, I hear this a lot when people talk about meditation. It's like they're trying to meditate, they're trying. But maybe meditation isn't how you connect with something bigger than you. Maybe you connect with universal forces, that kind of divine energy that is determining everything we're doing, and that unity consciousness. Maybe you connect with that by running or swimming or some other way. And I think trying to follow other people's paths can be more difficult than following your own. And so I really believe that you should never give up following your own path. A lot of my guests on Silence talked about having children. And, to be fair, that's what women are able to do. They were giving a womb, and all the biological systems within to be able to carry a child for 9 months and give birth. And so often a lot of women have that as their calling. And I think it can be really hard to try and follow any other path, because that's what we're so fundamentally, biologically wired to do. But there are some women, and maybe I'm one of those women, that feel like they've got another calling, and it can be really difficult grappling with that, because society tells you, well, you're a woman, you should be having a child, and actually in your heart you just don't feel that that's right for you. And I've really struggled with that myself, because I come from a very traditional family, and I think there was probably some sort of expectation to become a mother one day, but I've never in my heart ever actually felt like that's something that I want to do yet. But I mean, the biological clock keeps ticking, and maybe one day I might feel like I want to be a mum, but then it will be too late. It's so difficult. But essentially I've always been following my own calling. And I think women really, really struggle with this, because their calling might not be the conventional way. And in episode 64, we really hear my guest grappling with, and I think the points that she raises are points that a lot of women battle with when it comes to having children.
Well, I kind of think I want kids, but I don't want to have them young, but obviously you don't want to have them too old, and I don't really want to give up a career, but I don't want for my kids to just be raised by nannies and not be there for them. And I want to be able to have worked to a point where I feel like I'm a success before going away. But you have all these different thoughts around what it means, and I haven't answered that question in any shape or form.
Sometimes we never actually get answers. We battle with these questions our whole lifetimes, and it's only later on in life that the answers become clear. And by then it may or may not be too late. It's difficult choice, actually. I should probably do an episode on choice, because choice is really tricky. When you have to choose, you're not quite sure whether you made the right decision. And I remember actually in one of my episodes of Silence, the women saying, well, once you make a choice, you have to just be happy with what you've chosen. And I think sometimes we can suffer because we're battling with different choices, and we choose, and then for me anyway, I kind of look over my shoulder going, maybe I should have chosen the other thing. And there is no straight, easy answer to choice. And I think sometimes with choice, you just have to go with what feels right at the time. And I've always gone with what feels right at the time. And, the net result is that I don't have certain things in life as a result of choosing. But it's a kind of cumulative effect of choosing and then dealing with the consequences, especially later on down the line. It's not easy. Again, more of these sort of like ramblings and debates from episode 80.
Where that time comes in my life, it'll probably have several more years of work invested in trying to be where I want to be, and knowing that motherhood might be one of the biggest rewards, as one of the biggest sacrifices that I ever make in my life, is kind of scary. And not knowing what I'll have to give up or potentially, just choose not to do.
Yeah, motherhood, I think, is a tough one for women. I think, especially women who are super smart, want to pursue STEM careers and have that biological clock ticking, because trying to fit that in with sort of developing your career is not an easy one. And I must say, men seem to be increasingly more understanding of that. And men also, I think, struggle with this whole when do I fit kids in thing. Obviously, they don't have to give themselves up physically the way women do, but I think men now are moving into an era where they really want to enjoy the kids that they have helped to create. And that wasn't always the case. I mean, I was raised in an era where there was all this macho-ness and, women stayed at home to raise the kids. They didn't have a career, and men went out to win the bread. And that seems to be changing. It's certainly changed within my lifetime, and that's really encouraging, because I think, if you're gonna sort of decide to have kids, or even not decide but end up having kids, I think it's really good to partake in the process of that, the whole of the kids' lives. And yeah, I think, I don't know how I got there, but I think however life turns out, I think it's really important to just be happy with what is. I think it's important to really show up for your life, be there, partaking in it, being present, doing the best you can, making the best decisions that you can, making the right choices for you. But ultimately, being happy with your choices, being happy with the way it's turned out, accepting what is, and taking responsibility, I guess, taking responsibility for the way life turns out. I mean, if you're constantly giving up, I think it's really difficult to feel happy about the way your life's going, because, you're not really showing up for life if you give up. You're kind of just not putting that effort in. And I think it's really important to do your best, be your best. And I think that's summarised by my guest from episode 95, where it's really about being happy about the choices you're making, whether that brings ups, downs, or anything in between, but just accepting responsibility for the way you've chosen your life to turn out.
I'd rather give up all the money in the world to be doing my passion and working at my passion than sitting at a desk job daily doing something I hate for the money to then go do my hobby. I'd rather be grumpy and mad at work for something not going right, but still loving what I do, than going through the drudge day to day, hating it, really looking forward to the weekend.
And I think, that is the ultimate conclusion, is that we all have choices in life, particularly us in the West. We really have a lot of choice, and we often agonise about what the right thing to do is. Should I do this? Should I do that? I'm not sure. Yes, no, and everything in between. But it's like, whatever choice you make, it's about being happy with it, and it's about accepting the choices you've made, and that's why giving up shouldn't be an option. You know, if you want something out of life, go for it. Go for what it is you want. Whether you get it or not is really up to the universe, but you should really partake in what it is. I really believe that everyone should really go for what they want in life. And then the way it turns out, accept it, because I mean there are just certain things we can't control, and be happy with the choices that you've made. And I think all of that can be summarised from my guest from episode 48.
As I get older now, I realize that the actual challenge in life, I think, is being content. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you have to give up or accept second best. Not at all. But finding a place where you are happy and content with your life, whatever that is. And it comes back to knowing who you are, understanding yourself, and finding that contentment. So that's my having it all. Finding a place where I'm content with what I have, whatever it may be. I'm not there yet.
Don't give up on the things that you really want in life. Go for what it is that you believe you deserve, and never, ever give up. Thanks for listening this week. Please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review if you can. I'd love to have your feedback about this episode or any others that you've listened to, and maybe even some suggestions for future topics on this show. It's all about self-discovery and evolution on Innervation, particularly with a view to becoming more fulfilled and contented as a human being. Be kind and loving to yourself, and I wish you all a great week.